Looks like we have everyone. We will likely be here for a few more minutes while some more folks join. So don't worry if anyone is joining as I'm talking here, you're just missing the introduction. We're here today for a Newpoint Navigator series on company reporting season issues, what to watch for. We're joined by Newpoint advisors, Ken Yeager, as well as Paul, and Bill Harrod is here from First Financial Bank. They'll be talking to you about what to watch for in this time of year and in 2024 for company season reporting issues, as well as what to do when those occur and some war stories along the way. So I'll hand it over to Ken Yeager here in just a moment to moderate the panel, again joined by Paul Shapiro and Bill Harrod. And at the end, we will let you know what comes next, which is a takeaway piece that will give you some tools and techniques to watch for those reporting season issues. So without further ado, Ken, take it away.
Thank you very much. Hi, this is Ken Yeager, founder and president of Newpoint Advisors Corporation. We are a small business ourselves that exists to help other small businesses in distress. Our job is to turn around small businesses, typically financially underperforming between $5 and $50 million in revenue. And we're hosting this webinar as one in a series about how to intervene before it's too late, saving companies, saving assets, and saving jobs. And not just from a turnaround consulting standpoint, but really how a financial advisor, a lender relationship manager can get ahead of the curve so that they don't have to call someone like Newpoint, or what are some of the things that intersect with Newpoint when you're trying to be a trusted advisor. So why we're talking about financial reporting issues, the combination of the closing of this year, tax season, sort of the timing, and sort of the reporting that comes in for a lot of small businesses starts sort of a cycle that began about a month or so ago, and we're going to kind of continue to build through the next several months. And one of the things that comes up, and we want to share with you guys in a second, is what we want to present to you in that format about that particular issue, which is at the end of this webinar, you will walk away with what you should watch for as these reports start rolling in, or don't roll in, as we'll talk about, and how to intervene when you see challenges beginning to emerge and be your best trusted advisor for your clients. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about an overview of the data before I introduce my co-panelists today. What defines a small business and why are they struggling today? So small businesses, $1 to $50 million in revenue, up to $500 and 500 employees. This kind of generally circles around what the SBA defines small businesses as. There are over 32 million small businesses in the U.S. as of 2022. They account for 64% of jobs, which is an incredible amount of the economy. 50% of small businesses fail, though, in the first 5 years. And this is a problem that we're all trying to watch out for. Nobody wants to see that. It's always a pain and difficult thing. For you as a trusted advisor, it's hard to find new clients. For the clients, it's always difficult to go out of business. As we move into 2024, some of the things that we're seeing and why we want to bring this cycle of business reporting into focus is we think that as trusted advisors, you're going to run into a few things that are going to make this year a little more of a challenge. Some of those are the obvious. We're all watching the sustained and high interest rates. Everyone thought they would be going down. There'd be announcements of this, and it just seems to be a little stickier. So we're all going to have to be cautious. But we know that in 2023, it already started to happen, and there were issues that were hitting on people. Higher insurance costs been coming at everyone for quite some time now, kind of post-COVID. Increased labor costs, also a vestige of the COVID and other government regulations that have caused it, and also demographics that have created issues around the labor market, and rising rents. Shelter is an issue in the United States, not enough of it, or as we find out from a credit standpoint, some of it's not in the right place at the right time, and we may have some struggling credits with people who have built infrastructure, but now there's nobody there to buy it or rent from it. All while the government funding has if you will, has sunset, and we're all kind of running back to the reality of running businesses on our own cash flow. Okay, so let me introduce my co-panelists. Today, in a moment where I'm going to have Paul Shapiro, Senior Managing Director and one of Newpoint's advisors, experts who coaches small businesses through financial challenges, and Bill Harrod, Corporate Chief Credit Officer of First Financial Bank, who has a tremendous background in financial transparency and banking, and who I've seen in action over several years working with him. So with that, we will get started. All right. Today, I want to have Bill talk to us about a couple of different things, and Paul's going to kind of fill in that conversation with us. And as I promised to people earlier, we will end this webinar with a couple of different industries we think that will be more likely to be in trouble. As I like to say, these are industries where definitely hope is not going to be a strategy this year. Okay, with that, what we want to do to start off with is we want Bill to lay the groundwork for us and talk to us a little bit about what a normal or good practices earning season looks like for a credit officer and for a relationship manager at a bank. And with that, Bill, I'll let you get started.
Great. Thanks, Ken. Really appreciate it. And, love talking about this stuff because, the relationship management side of this business is absolutely critical. And, we employ a credit excellence mantra here. And we very closely monitor our receipt of financial information. And we ensure we get it, right? And we highlight it and we call it weeding the garden. Because those financial statements are knowledge. That is power, right? And, when things are going swell, you get the financial statements in when you're supposed to, you take a look at them, and you've got a great opportunity if the performance is going well to really deepen your relationship with your borrower. And, asking them questions about their improved performance, right? If that's the case, and you can always sell something. And I look at financial statements as an opportunity to learn something to help the company and the bank. And then we get it, put it through its paces, make sure we get the full portfolio through, and then we move on. But those when it goes well, you get it when you're supposed to, you have the right conversations, and you work on any needs that they have, and really enhance your relationship.
Great. Bill, thanks for laying the groundwork there for us. And now we want to peel back that layer, that onion, and talk more between you and Paul about what happens when things those three stages don't go so well. So, the timely reporting, the analytical process, and then the communication. So why don't we start with just the timely collection of data, and what are some of the things you've experienced that have not gone well?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that is one of the earlier red flags, and you do this long enough, you have a cadence with your borrower on when you get those financial statements based on the reporting frequency. And if you start to see slippage past that due date, even their established due date, in addition to their just normal cadence, generally what you're going to find is there's going to be some issues that you're going to have to dig into. Late statements are usually bad news, unfortunately. It makes sense, right? Because it's not something you want to bring your banker in the loop on instantaneously. And it's a little bit daunting, especially when you put your life's work into this small business, right? But as a relationship manager, you can really, the work that you've done on the good months or the good quarters or the good years, should help you get into that financial discussion, right? And you should be able to get them quickly. And we keep track of the statements, and we hit them pretty hard. And back in the day, I had one customer that I had to charge $100 a day until he got me his financial statements. And that was because I got so frustrated with them. I'm like, there's nothing I can do. And when you finally get those statements, the analyzing. We get to the analysis part, and that's in my mind, the most critical thing. Okay. And that's where we have a chance to really analyze, understand, and develop good questions that we can ask to explore what's going on. And in the case of late financial statements, there might be some issues. And to get to the root of those, you got to dig into it, right? And you got to ask some pointed questions, and you got to really listen to those responses to make sure that they're reasonable, and then keep peeling the onion back. And the more you know about a customer's business, the more that you can help them, because we're trying to bridge a gap here. If we do have some performance softness, and getting on the same page is pretty critical, and essentially eliminating the worry part of the process from the business owner saying, I had bad results, don't know, don't want to talk to my banker, to when you can actually get down in front of them and sit down and say, what's really going on? What's driving the issues here? And let's start talking about things to get started on. And it's really difficult, as we all know, for bankers to do their thing when we don't have the financial information. And that RM is such a critical role when you think about it, because they're the voice of the customer for the bank. And the more that they know, the better.
Just to jump in for a second, Bill, you talk about the voice of the customer. I mean, right? The important thing here is to sort of mold and continue to grow that trusted advisor relationship. And then you talk about how important it is to dig into the information, and the more you know, the more you learn. One of the things that we have found extremely useful is the 13-week cash flow model. And, in very many cases, we put that together with the client over a period of 6 weeks and build it in 2 weeks. And then very often that is sent to the lender week after week after week. So the lender gets a 13-week horizon to what's going on. So you're getting additional information. You're seeing things almost live, and there's a lot of transparency. And if you look out into the future and you see a blip coming, that's a opportunity for you as a lender to approach your customer and say, hey, seems like you're going to have an issue here. I want to help you. How can we work on this together proactively to find a solution?
Yeah, Paul, I love that, Paul. And the 13-week cash flows are an absolute wonderful tool. And it is, we go through the same dance every time we need to put them in, okay, which is, I don't want to do it. It's too much work. I don't have the data. And that's really fear, right? Because fear of the unknown, right? And then knowing what you think might be there, that is very scary. But we can help our borrowers understand, and we do this time and time again, because once they get onto a 13-week cash flow and they understand the benefits and the planning benefits for them, makes their life easier, less reactionary, can talk to their bank, et cetera, et cetera. I've seen companies use them forever, but that getting it in there and having that discussion, that's the hard part. But you keep it in that we both have the same goal, right? Of getting this company stabilized, profitable, so it then can take care of all its shareholders or stakeholders, be it the bank, the owner, and the employees.
Absolutely. And I love that product and that service. I was just delivering a message to a bunch of CEOs in a meeting recently. And I said, this actually, I know you might think this is punitive and somehow some burden upon you, but this is actually how venture capitalists and private equity firms run their businesses. Mm-hmm. This is top secret, but this is what they do and how they make things so profitable and work so well in their organizations. And you would think that somebody who's struggling a moment might want to take, a lesson from the folks that are making all the gold, apply it to themselves.
Yeah.
All right.
You got to tap through that psychology, right?
Right.
And these businesses are very important. It's part of next to their family, the most important thing to the owner. And we got to be sensitive to that as we work it.
All right. So let's talk about the next situation. Okay, so we've analyzed the financial information, and we've got as a lender, you've got your strategy. Maybe there was a 13-week cash flow model involved, maybe there wasn't, but the bank has been able to check off the box data received. And perhaps in that data was some of the things that were unsettling for the institution or for the credit team. And now we've told the relationship manager, you need to go talk to your client. Tell us a little bit about some of the things that you've experienced in the past and some of the best practices you feel are there in those tough moments.
Yeah. A couple things that are important. And earlier on, I talked about a little bit, touched on just how important it is that a relationship manager, portfolio manager, spend the time to truly develop a relationship with their borrower. Okay. And when things are good, that's the time to do it, to get everyone on the same page. Don't be the person who only calls with, bad news. Call them when their sales are great, right? Because you want them to see your name pop up on their phone and feel okay about it, right? And then it's the work you do with the numbers, right? And I've got a couple quick stories. And I had a borrower one time that, based on their performance, which was slipping, okay, I did some math looking out into the future and covenant compliance and whatnot, and where the kind of the linchpin was on the burn, when we would go into a burn environment. And I thought about that, and I knew that we were going to have a problem potentially in the future. And I also knew with this particular borrower, it was a second generation family owned business with the first generation's retirement plan being distributions from the business. And, that is obviously very important to the current owner and the former owners, right? And based on the trajectory of where it was going, I saw that there was a potential that wasn't going to be paid in 6 to 9 months. Okay. And so when I went out there and talked to him, I laid out my analysis, right? Just like we ask for analysis from our borrowers, we got to provide that back to them. And I showed them what I was seeing. And I said, basically, we're putting, your parents' retirement at risk. So we need to set up a structure, worked on the details, basically pre and post fixed charge coverage, and having that conversation up front. It wasn't easy. He had to go talk to his parents and get them sold on this, but I helped him get that information and the ammunition he needed to have that conversation. And I also knew that as we identified various areas to potentially pull expenses out, I felt very confident that he and his team would do everything possible. Okay. And they didn't miss a hitch, right? But it would have been a different scenario if we waited till there was a default, had a default, and shut them down, right? And for the payments. And by doing that, the way that we did it, we're all on the same roadmap. We were working together, and it wasn't perfect the whole time. We had some twists and turns, but we knew where we were at, what we were trying to protect, and what we needed to do to get there together. And it worked out very, very well.
Go ahead.
Bill, from what you say, I heard the words almost being proactive, right? Taking a lead first as opposed to waiting till the hammer drops. One of the things we find really useful, we have a viability assessment. We actually call it a 20-day proactive assessment. So you can go in there as a trusted advisor, help this individual out to make the operation better so that it actually has a value for the parents. When we go in through a very exhaustive process to evaluate the company, different operating areas, and really come back with an assessment of here are the things that are going well, here are the things that aren't going well, it can be fixed, and create opportunity for growth, for value. At the end of the day, creating value for himself or herself and the family and the parents, and preserving that. If you wait too long and you aren't proactive, as you said, then obviously things don't go well. This is an avenue, a path that we have found that is able to nip problems in the bud early, as opposed to waiting to when things are much harder to do. I mean, time is definitely your enemy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Time is your enemy, and velocity matters. And there's lots you can do to turn the tide. If you are able to recognize it, if you're able to get your bar to recognize it and work on it together. And, we always focus on the EBITDA engine. To me, that is the most important part, is that engine generating that free cash flow that provides for the employees, the owners, and our interest, right? And I want to protect that very much. And because of that nurturing and understanding, you got to be proactive, right? And you don't take your foot off the gas. And we're not being mean, okay? We're just trying to understand. And when you understand, then we can help you. And, bankers are in a very good and unique position, okay? We are a mile wide and an inch deep, okay? But we have lots of experience when we hit little bumps, right? And we have a decision to make, right? Do we work with our customers through those little bumps? That's how you really get customers for, customers for life. Or do you wait, you hope it goes away, and then something happens, and now it's just, a mess. So early intervention, proactiveness is absolutely critical, and getting people in there sooner. And it's going to take longer than you think, right? And, and you'll have stages, right? Depending on what you need. And the quicker you can get to the, yes, I believe we need to work together to kind of get this on the right rails, getting to there as fast as possible can really change your outcomes and keep watch credits from even, going into your crit class, which would be awesome, right?
Yes. And I think that, to build on that, Bill, there's one of those touch points for if I'm a relationship manager and I'm asking the question, okay, I have a problem. Okay, I'm communicating with my client. Okay, I've got a plan. I'm going to do like Bill. I'm going to be like Bill, and I'm going to go out there and engage with this person. But reality starts to set in, and that's a lot of time. So there's a point where you have to say, okay, as my best view as trusted advisors, I can't stay on the field. I got to play coach, and I got to get other players in the field. And there's a moment where you need to yourself look at the that use of time and where you can prosper in this whole process and manage it, but not necessarily get caught in the grit. And that's where you look at people like Paul and I to be an assist. But to your point, Bill, it's not a one and done conversation. It will have to come over a period of time to get people to understand why that's valuable to them.
Yeah. And it's, and Ken, that's a very good point. And, it's always challenging to admit there's something wrong with something you've worked with so hard on, and to take other people's input. And that's a psychological hurdle that, we have to help people through, help our customers through, and we owe that to them, right? They're our customers. And we have to have patience and compassion, but at the same time being firm, right? Because we want them to understand that we're here to help. And sometimes it doesn't work out and you got to go a different route.
Absolutely. I am fond of saying, Bill, no disrespect to any financial institution, because the U.S. banking system is an incredible system and the franchises there do good work. But I tell people, you don't need a bank, you need a banker. The person that will stand there with you in good days and bad days and act as a trusted advisor and call a spade when you're making a mistake.
Yeah.
But that takes you time to build that relationship. But that is the way a banker earns their stake and builds their business and becomes profitable.
Yeah, Ken, I really like that, and it triggered a story for me. And when I was on the sales side in a relationship manager role, I had a customer that was mine for a couple years, 3 years or so. It was a fine business, okay, but I started through my work at the bank I was working at. I started to learn that I was not, my credit officers didn't have the same opinion on the credit that I did. Okay. And I had to, I went out to them when I started feeling the heat, right? And I said, hey, we got to do some work here. I said, because I don't think 6 months or 9 months from now, my bank is going to be good for your bank. And I just told them flat out, this is why we're having issues. And I said, so let's work and get you a new home before, my bank gets all goofy on us and makes you backs you in a corner and limits your options. And when I did it, I felt, I'm going to lose this guy. I had a good relationship with him. I'm losing forever. But it's actually, one of my best relationships that I found out through the grapevine, because when this guy tells folks about bankers, he always mentions my name because I told him what he needed to hear, not what he wanted to hear. And so I use that statement a lot of places. And that's when, for me, I went from being a baby banker to a full-blown banker. And that is the thing, is when you can tell your borrower what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. So critical.
Absolutely. That is a great story. That is a profile in courage in going out and leaning into that way. And I think everyone should understand what that does for you. And I think that's a great example of building yourself into a trusted advisor. It takes those moments and those steps.
Yeah.
Look, Bill, thank you very much for running through that. And Paul, also, thank you very much for giving us our comments on good ways to help elevate a trusted advisor in the eyes of a client who is struggling. What I also want to do is I have a couple of parting gifts, if you will, a couple of the industries I said I would talk about. And Bill and Paul, when I'm done with the list, we're here in rapid fire. Feel free to chime in if you feel, as you are inspired. But as I mentioned before, these are industries that Newpoint's tracking. And as of this quarter, we believe that in 2024, hope is not a strategy. And these people need to be being proactive if they haven't already been contacted by their trusted advisor. They need that. They're going to need that hug, that love, that support, and likely also some a little more help from Newpoint, as we're seeing that already happen. So here's the list that I'm seeing right now. I thought that farms were going to be out of the soup, and 2022 was a good year, but 2023 proved to be a little rough, and there are no friends for them in 2024. So the farming industry, not just the farmers themselves, but everyone who is inputting and exporting or outputting from the fields, is feeling quite a pinch here in 2024. And the industry really feels like at harvest time, 2024 is going to disappoint this year. So we want to brace for that. Next, the construction industry. This one seemed to be leveling itself. But frankly, there seems to be, even in the good spaces like industrials, there was a lot of overpay. And then in the space where we were in the multifamily housing, we seem to have a mismatch of assets. And that's going to be very isolated, but very much painful for different people. Manufacturing, it looked like it was steady Eddie, but now in Q2, we are seeing the PMI index go below 50 and likely kind of hover there for quite some time. That's a sign of contraction. Transportation got into trouble late 2022 and 2023. Everyone knows the story of yellow freight. That continues to go forward, and everyone that we speak to in the industry says we're at the bottom, great, but we're not going to lift out of the bottom for quite some time. this is going to take more than just the interest rates changing and things. It's an industry issue. Next, real estate rental, same thing as I said for construction and the multifamily housing issue, and also commercial real estate, which is a statement of the obvious. We're going to see that roll out like thunder in late 2024, but it's going to carry with us for several more years as it has in prior, let's say, down cycles for that industry. Professional services, here's one you don't really hear every day, but the men and women who are good at what they do and are technical consultants and work with the Fortune 5,000 companies out there are finding the purse strings zip tight. We hear good news from the Fortune 500 said about their earnings, but the reason it is because they've been tightening the purse strings and cutting expenses, not necessarily at the layoff level, but they are hurting that industry pretty broadly. Next one is education. If it is a secondary education or colleges, they're losing opportunities due to the demographic changes in so many different directions. People not wanting to get the degrees, not as many people who are birthed every year, so that declining in birth rates, and then high interest rates on the buildings that these fine institutions are trying to support. Then last but not least, the food service industry, to kind of bring the food services industry, to bring this full circle from our ag story. Yes, it hurts at the farm, but it's also hurting at the table. And we're seeing demographic shifts amongst companies who are been 30, 40 years in the industry, not having keeping up with the demographic changes at the exact same time that rents are going up and customers are choosing to tighten up their purse strings as the consumers are starting to get pinched, or at least for the majority, and certainly for your $1 and $2 sort of Yelp size establishments. This is really starting to come home for them.
I want to add two things to that list, Ken. I agree with you. In the healthcare space, specifically two areas: senior living. We're seeing a lot of issues post-COVID still with census and high payroll, always a problem, and also in temporary staffing, specifically as it relates to healthcare. It's very difficult. The COVID time drew up the need for temporary staffing, and now that's come down quite a bit. And the nurses, the hospitals are trying to retain nurses on a permanent basis, not on a contract basis. So there's a number of institutions that are having a lot of trouble in that space. So I expect to see more of those.
Indeed. Bill, any parting shots from your end, concerns that you're seeing?
Yeah, well, it's been a interesting couple years, right? And so all of us have heard, post-COVID, right? The top lines were just killing it, bulletproof, got backlogs through 24. Things are looking great, right? We didn't have to worry about top line. We're really worried about the inflation and interest. And part of the work that you do when you get financial statements is, you understand where they're at from plan and budget and last year and all that other stuff. And the key is understanding what our borrowers are telling us, right? And we look at that, on the whole, right? We get a sense for kind of what are our borrowers telling us about revenues, right? And, we're really looking out for, when, we start seeing sales being pushed back to the second half of the year, right? That's a red flag when I'm off plan, off budget, off prior year. And by the way, we're going to catch up, hockey stick it in Q3 and Q4. And that just warrants a lot more questions, because on the surface, it says our borrower might not know what is going to happen. We need to work a little bit deeper because, as we said, hope is not a strategy. And, the last thing I would like to emphasize is questions. Quality questions and curiosity can give you all the information you need. And, simple questions will give you a response, but not much else. But if you really are intentional about your questions, you can learn so much about what's going on to give you the tools to figure out what to do. So ask really good questions. Get below the surface.
Bill, thank you so much. That was a great way to finish this off. And Paul, thank you so much also for bringing your years of experience to this conversation as well. And with that, we're going to end our podcast for today. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
I'll jump in with one quick final note of what you can expect to see and hear from us in the coming days. So Ken, Paul, and Bill, thank you so much for lending your expertise. I certainly learned a lot. I hope everyone did. Thank you to everyone who we had log in and participate today. We'll email you out a link to the full recording of this webinar immediately after this discussion. And just as a final parting thought of mine, make sure that you know that Newpoint Advisors are one of the only turnaround experts specializing in small businesses, which is why they were talking to us today. And they offer a fixed fee pricing and fixed timelines for a really collaborative team approach. So hopefully you heard some of that. And if you have any questions or want to connect with Newpoint at all, please reach out over email md@newpointadvisors.us. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.